So here's the video I promised for Chapter 4, Section 2. This is going to be on functions. I'm going to try to stop this video at around 8 minutes so that I will be able to upload it to YouTube. So I'm sure there's going to be more parts to this video. So just make sure that you are watching them in order, okay? Remember, this is not a professional. My voice definitely does not lend to professional recording, so feel free to make fun of me all you want. That's fine. I can do that to myself as well. So in this lesson, we're going to decide whether or not a relation is a function. We're going to define the domain, range, independent, dependent variables. We're going to talk about function notation. We're going to evaluate a function, and I'm going to show you how to tell what's excluded from the domain. You should have your notes out, by the way. If you don't, just pause the video, go get your notes, because you can be copying stuff down in your notes as we go. Okay, there is a difference between a relation and a function. Anytime you have two numbers or a word and a number, any two things that are paired together, there's a relationship there. It's called a relation. So anything is a relation, but there's only certain relations are functions. And functions are what we're going to be most concerned about for this chapter. But you are going to be asked to decide whether or not a relation is a function. So there is a, this would be my definition. You probably wouldn't find this in a math book. But so in my words, in order for two things to be a function, there has to be a specific relationship. So for every x value, there's only one y value. So in other words, you can't have two of the same x values in different points. You can have as many repeating y values as you want, but if I give you a list of points, all you really need to do is look at the x values. If there's 2 points that have the same x value, it is not a function, okay? Let me give you an example that maybe you could just think of to make sense of this. If we think of our grades, and I wrote your grades as a point where the first number is the percent you get, and the second value would be the letter grade you get. So if somebody got a 70% on the midterm, they would get a C. If somebody gets a 75%, they get a C. An 85% a B, an 83% a B, and you could look at the other grades. So does that make sense? I believe if you looked at all those points, it would be fair. According to the gradebook that the Art Institute uses, it would be fair if you got a particular percent and a particular grade. Now, if you look at the second set of points, if somebody gets a 75% on the midterm, I would give them a C. Somebody else gets a 75%, I give them an F. Maybe I don't like them because I didn't like their handwriting or something, I don't know. Somebody else gets an 83, they get a B. Another person in 83 gets a D. And by now you should be thinking that this would not be fair. It would not be fair that 2 people or 3 people that get the same percentage end up with different letter grades. That is not fair. This would not be a function. The other list of values is a function. And if you look at the first list, my x values, which are always the first numbers in a point, the x values are all different. They're all different, so that's the point. That's all I really need to be concerned of. Here I've got 75%, 75%, and another 75%. There's more than one 83, but that doesn't really matter. As soon as I have one x value that repeats, it is not a function. There's another way to determine whether or not something's a function visually, and that's called the vertical line test. So if I plotted these graphs to you, just to give you a visual here, if I plotted 75% and a C, this is where that point would go. And then a 70% and a C would be about right here. An 85% and a B, 83% and a B, 97% and an A, 91% an A, 64% a D, 79 a C. So there are my points that I plotted about those grades. So there's this thing called the vertical line test. If I can get this to work, this red, here's my red vertical line. May not work. If I can take my red vertical line, maybe it's not going to work here. I want to imagine it going across my graph. If this vertical line ever touches more than one point, it's not a function. And you can kind of see that this line is never going to touch more than one point. So that passes the vertical line test. That is a function. If I graph the other one, and I'll use green over here, 75% and a C is about right here. 75% and an F. 83% and a B. 83 and a D. And hopefully you can tell as I'm graphing these that the vertical line test is not going to work. It's going to fail the vertical line test. 75 and an A, because some of these points are vertically on top of each other, and an 83 and an A. So you don't really need this red line. Let's see if it works. But look at that. Right away, these 3 points fail the vertical line test. These 3 points fail the vertical line test. So this one, not a function. So you can either look at the x values. If there's any x values that are the same, it's not a function. Or you can look at the graph or visualize or just imagine what the graph would look like if you plotted the points. If the lines line up on top of each other, not a function. Okay, so if I asked you to make a list of 3 points that would not be a function, just make sure that the x values are all different. There's my 3 x values, they're different. This one's going to be a function. It doesn't matter what the y values are. Y values can be the same, but because these 3 x values are all different, it is a function. And if I made a list of points that was not a function, as long as 2 of the x values are the same, it's not a function. It doesn't matter what the y values are. Y values don't matter whether they're the same or different. Only the x values matter. And you could plot them. So I could take these points. 1, 0 would be right here. 2, 1. 3, 0. Sorry that I'm doing these without numbers on my graph, but here's my line. These 3 pass the vertical line test. Okay? Green ones would not. 3, 1. 3, 2. 4, 2. Those 2 points where the x values are 3, they end up lining up vertically, so the green, not a function. I'm going to stop it now because of the time limit, and I will pick off where I leave in the next video.